So, what do other political figures think about former President Jacob Zuma? Zuma's sentencing, right? That sentence, 15 months, sentenced by the Constitutional Court. That was earlier today. He's found guilty of contempt of court. So I want us to bring in Mmusi Maimane now, who is another political leader, right? One South Africa Movement chief activist, and he joins us now via Skype. Mr. Maimane, thank you so much for your time. We've been asking lots of questions about what should happen to former presidents who defy the Constitution. You are making a proposal, right, that perhaps Parliament needs to intervene because we're dealing with a president that has openly defied the Constitution. He's now been found guilty of aggravated contempt of court. What do you want Parliament to do?
Good afternoon, Clement, and good afternoon to fellow South Africans. You know, when our Constitution was drafted, it perhaps had the looming figure of Nelson Mandela in its backdrop. And it gave many privileges to the president. It gave extraordinary powers, but it also meant that it allowed extraordinary benefits post ending the term of office. The natural consequences of those is that some of those benefits are put in the Constitution, that when you look at Section 89 of the Constitution, the clauses say that unless a president has been impeached, the benefits remain. So when you understand that process, I don't think that we anticipated that we'd have a president who would simply defy the Constitutional Court, but equally so, I can remember fighting the case to say Jacob Zuma cannot be litigating on behalf of the state or on the state's account, on yours and my account, and being found in a court to be a delinquent litigant. And ultimately, all of these matters have been coming for a long while. It's not a new call, I've made it before, and I'm making it again, that there must be an ad hoc committee that really looks at the benefits accrued to presidents currently and former presidents. Because if you do not do that, you are going to create a situation where in a process that is not of an impeachment kind, where someone post facto violates the constitutional provisions that they swore to protect, that those will still be upheld. So my call is let that committee come on board. It can summon representations. It can amend the constitutional provision on that score, and then ultimately we can call to say, in this instance, as it is the case of President Zuma, and the urgency it presents, that his benefits be removed. Because a base benefit, even like security, you can't have someone protected by bodyguards in a prison as an argument, if that should come to that.
Yeah.
So I really do think this is an opportunity for us to review those provisions.
Some may argue, Mmusi, that, well, this person has contributed, right, to the liberation of this country. What about that contribution in the fight against apartheid? You know, he may have made mistakes during his tenure. He may have been found guilty of contempt by the Constitutional Court. But some may argue he mostly served the country.
All of us as citizens cannot deny the fact that different people make contributions to society. And ultimately, Mr. Zuma did likewise. This is not a cancellation of that role. But I think it would be amiss that we were to judge the moral caliber of an individual on their contribution and ignore the rule of law. Because that would simply mean that on another day, we could say a priest, somebody, because of their moral standing or whatever their contribution is, the law does not apply to them or does not apply equally to them. As sad as this day is, and I'm sad to see that Mr. Zuma now faces the prospect of going to jail. In truth, if you break the law and you commit an act, you should be equal before the law. It is a departure from apartheid where Parliament was the supreme apex of accountability. This is where we say constitutional supremacy, and the Constitutional Court is the ultimate authority. And therefore, when we stand up on that score, we should be willing to say that the rule of law is applicable to everybody, that it ought not to be the rule of man. And in this instance, Mr. Zuma was given the opportunity to make representation. He chose not to. He proceeded to undermine the integrity of the judiciary, and ultimately he played a political game, whilst in fact it was always a legal matter.
Yeah.
The ones now that have to decide on the morality of the question is his own party, the ANC, because I think now it's incumbent on President Ramaphosa to make a decision as to whether is he going to uphold the unity of the ANC by asking us to go plead with Mr. Zuma and do whatever, or is he going to uphold the constitutional judgment, which then implores the Minister of Police to do what the Constitutional Court has described or at least commanded him to do. That then becomes the most crucial question that faces us in the next 8 days.
Talking about the benefits that are reviewed for former president, would you make the same case, for instance, for F.W. de Klerk? I mean, he still enjoys the status of former president. He may not have defied a summons or found guilty of contempt of court, but he's continued to deny that apartheid, which was a ruthless, unjustifiable system, was a crime against humanity. So should he also be stripped of that status?
Absolutely. I think unequivocally the question on the table is that the acts that took place under apartheid were reprehensible. We took a view in the transition as a country to say perhaps in the prosecution of crimes against apartheid, we would go to a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, we'd hold an election, and therefore there was an understanding. That he should continue to accrue the benefits. I think that it's up to Parliament to review that, and I would urge the case that even in his case, those should be reviewed and removed, because ultimately we are reflecting on what has happened in the state of different people as they go. But it's not up to my subjective view. This ought to be a process that Parliament takes on the table. If it was left up to me, again, I would take the stance to simply say those should be removed.
Yeah. Mr. Maimane, I'm told that our reporter Spamandla Koke will be speaking to Edward Zuma in a short while. So if I interrupt you, please accept my apology. I'm not sure if Sipamandla already has Edward Zuma. If that's the case, let me thank you, Mr. Maimane. Thank you for making time to chat to us. And maybe that's a question we're asking you, right? Is such a former president that has been found guilty of contempt of court worthy of all the benefits that come with the former presidents? Mmusi Maimane says even F.W. de Klerk must be stripped of those particular benefits. So Mmusi Maimane asking the ad hoc committee in Parliament to be established that will look at the privileges and benefits of former presidents so that they can be reviewed. And I'm interested in your thoughts. Maybe you can tweet us at eNCA as to whether you think some of these former presidents are worthy of the status of former president. All right.